Charlie McGee can help. Learn more at friendnet.com.
Are you feeling challenged or frustrated without a plan for what's next in your career and life? Are you seeing writings on the wall for needing to make a mid to late career change and don't know how or what to do? Coach Lisa Downs of New Aspect Coaching can guide you to what's next, providing a fresh perspective and supporting you to create a clear and compelling vision for your future and a plan to move forward. Call Lisa at 425-216-3015. That's 425-216-3015. New Aspect Coaching, fresh perspectives for your career.
Want to hear something different from talk radio? Keep your dial on Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Reigniting You, a new show that focuses on all aspects of making mid to late career transitions. A big thank you to our sponsor, FranNet, your franchise experts. So, Eric, some great questions came in over the last week that I'm excited to get to.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear them.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, no one asked me about the meaning of life because that my response probably wouldn't be too great on that one.
Well, we only have 30 minutes in the show, so.
That's right. I'd probably say something like, pizza? So I'm not too great with those existential types of questions.
You could do worse than have pizza be your meaning of life.
Yeah, I think so. Agreed. So, and before we get started, just my little disclaimer. So, really my giving recommendations, advice, it's really just based on my own experience and personally and working with clients and a lot of folks over the years and being a job candidate myself for many years, many times. So take it for what it is. It's just advice. So as with any advice, take what you can glean. If you choose not to act on it, that's your choice. So that's just my little disclaimer, so please don't sue us. Okay, so first question here is from Kim in Gig Harbor. I love Gig Harbor, great place. She just shared that she's been in the job market for about 9 months after getting laid off. Kim's in her early 50s, keeps being turned down for roles after getting through multiple rounds of interviews. She hasn't been able to get much direct feedback, but knows that she's lost out to a mix of internal and external candidates, a couple of them younger with less experience from what she's been able to glean in terms of information afterward, and is wondering if she needs to present herself differently or go after different roles, though she seems well qualified. What should I do next? So Kim, thanks so much for sending this one in, and so sorry to hear about this situation and what you're going through, and it can be incredibly frustrating to say the least. If you are unable to get more specific feedback to know exactly why you were turned down to any real detailed degree, I would just encourage you to consider how you've been answering those interview questions, and is there something perhaps that you can do differently to position yourself in the future when really fielding or answering those questions. So thinking about, positioning the experience and value that you bring. So, your resume obviously is getting you into the interview process. So if you're going through multiple rounds and that indicates that it's not so much your resume being an issue or your information getting in front of the folks who are part of that hiring process. So maybe think about how you're answering some of those interview questions. So are you clearly sharing examples of your work that shows how you get results? Are you really sharing clearly how you specifically support the organization that can show forward thinking? So, for example, can you help develop the next generation of leaders? So not quite sure what your level is in terms of in a hierarchy, but that's a key responsibility of any manager is to develop their people. So is that something where you can show, here's how I would do this in a way that's thinking about the future and helps setting up the organization for success down the road? Other examples of your own growth and development. So I often encourage folks to think about, when was a time that you learned something quickly and were able to jump on that and do that successfully? Sometimes there's a stereotype or a bias can creep in with folks who have been in the job market, a long time, or, have a lot of experience that perhaps aren't as quick to learn, pick up technology, et cetera, et cetera. So how can you think about, how might you be able to position yourself to combat some of those stereotypes, perhaps, or other examples of why you're the best fit for the role. Maybe it's about having a shorter ramp-up time. So you may not have to be in training as long as some less experienced folks, less seasoned folks, and you would be more able to dive in and go and hit the ground running, so to speak, to help position the organization for success that way. So that'd be my best recommendation, is think about how you've been perhaps answering or fielding some of those interview questions, and just see, is there a way that you could put a spin on it that would really show your forward thinking, your ability to learn, your ability to be agile and flexible, and how you can really set the organization up for success. So that's what I have for you on that, and good luck for that, and thank you for submitting that question. Really appreciate it. The next question is from Carol, who's down in San Mateo, California. That's the Bay Area. So that's cool, Eric. So that must mean that she listened via streaming or the podcast. So that's exciting.
Yeah, you can listen online at 1150kknw.com, or of course, if you have the app, or you checked out the podcast, which is out there as well, and easy to subscribe at all your favorite podcast providers.
Yeah, that's great. So thanks, Carol. So she shares that she's burned out in her current role. She works in sales for an IT company and is feeling a bit stuck. She shares that she's too young to retire yet, not old enough for Medicare, needs good health insurance, perhaps a little bit of golden handcuffs experience there. And how do I stop spinning in frustration and move forward? And that's an excellent question. Often it can be frustrating when you can feel that you are experiencing quite a bit of stress. Perhaps you're not waking up every day excited to start work. And, that's not a good feeling. I've definitely been there myself, and that's not a fun way to feel. And that you've lost that enthusiasm or that drive perhaps for your current role or just, the workplace in general, that can be really, really frustrating. So my encouragement would be to focus on, what do you really want for your vision? So if you take a step back and you're able to think more broadly and more strategically in terms of what you really want. That was my tip at the end of last week's show, was answering that question. What do you really want for yourself? Thinking about what needs to be present in your life to be happy with what you're doing. When you think about your days, what they look like, both with work that you're doing and your personal life, what do you see? And really think about, your strengths, your skills, your values. How can these inform your vision? And once you've got a great vision statement, then you can figure out your goals and rally around that vision for what you want to aim for. Really does provide you with a great anchor in terms of how you direct what you do next. When you've got that vision, I often liken it to the North Point on a compass. It's really giving you something that I said is an anchor and really to drive for, that you can focus on, that helps get away from the day-to-day stress and feeling so burned out. Often when folks go through that process and they've got a really clear vision, it really does help them ease the stress and gets them excited, because that gives them something to focus on. So that would be my best recommendation there. How about you, Eric? Do you have, for you, when you think about your life vision or your future, what are some things that are really important to you for that?
Yeah, I think having enough free time to pursue my hobbies and other interests are important. Not that my job isn't a big interest of mine, but just having a little extra time to be able to do the other things that I'm passionate about, I think is important. And, having enough income to live comfortably. And like you, in Western Washington, I love this place. So being able to stay here is important to me as well. So,
yeah, that's great. Yeah, I know in mine, I've got, that, living a a healthy, fun life here in Western Washington, doing my work to help people live great lives. And I've got in mind, of course, this was pre-COVID, and I've got in mind, traveling with Chris, my husband, at least, maybe 3-4 times a year. Of course, now that's pretty much kaput.
On pause
Yeah,
for the
on
moment.
pause. So, well,
Same.
they're still driving around in the car, but
Right.
not quite the same. Hopefully we can get back to that.
Hard to drive a car to France.
Yeah, that's a little difficult. But thanks, Eric, for that. And thanks, Kim and Carol, for kicking off this feature of the show. It's time for our next break. When we come back, I'll field a few more questions and have a preview for you of what's coming up next week. Hi, I'm Lisa Downs, career and retirement transition coach and host of Reigniting You on KKNW. I guide age 40-plus professionals to gain clarity, a renewed sense of purpose, and a career transition plan within 90 days so you can lead a fulfilling life regardless of your age. No longer does change have to mean riding off into the proverbial sunset. Let's talk about what your next phase of life can look like. Visit yournewaspect.com or call me at 425-216-3015. That's 425-216-3015. New Aspect Coaching. Fresh perspectives for your career.
Have a career transition related question or want to share your best or worst job story? Call 360-436-6496. That's 360-436-6496. Just leave a voicemail and we'll answer your question or share your story on a future show. Stay tuned for more Reigniting You with Lisa Downs.
Easy on the ears, good for the soul. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Reigniting You, a new show that discusses timely issues and topics about career transitions for Gen Xers and Boomers. I'm your host, Lisa Downs. We're continuing our first episode that's focused on answering listener questions called Ask Lisa. That will be a regular feature the second week of each month, and I'm here with our producer, Eric. So, Eric, anything that jumped out at you from the first couple questions before the break that you found interesting?
I think you had great advice for both of them, and I got to say I got a little bit fixated on their locations. Just because I love Gig Harbor too. It's a great place to kayak. We were talking about, traveling and, a great area, California, San Mateo as well. And so I kind of was thinking about the traveling thing while you were talking, I'm afraid.
Good.
But yeah, you also just gave some really good advice for folks. So if folks want to email you or leave a message that you can answer in future shows, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so they can send an email to reignitingyou@gmail.com or leave a voicemail at 360-436-6496. That's 360-436-6496. Just leave an audio message with your question or story, and I'll share it on the air. Just need your first name and location. That'd be great. So our next question is from Dan in Shoreline, here close to the area. He shares that he's out of a job for the first time in over 20 years, and his resume is in sore need of updating. Where do I start? So thanks for that, Dan, and sorry to hear about that situation. That's a long time to be out of the job market, and I'm sure it's a bit of a feeling of deer in headlights.
And what a great question, too.
Yeah, that is a great question.
I remember, last time I worked on my resume, it was all about finding the nicest paper that you could to put it on. So, these days that wouldn't really even factor into it, would it?
No, that heavy bonded stuff, that fancy paper.
You wanted it to stand out in a stack of papers.
Yeah, and then getting frustrated when your printer would fail at just the wrong moment. Yeah, absolutely. So Dan, just some recommendations here for just some good rules of thumb for resumes, resume practices. First thing is you want to have a really strong headline, or also called a brand statement, that really states who you are as a professional and the value you bring. So, not sure what industry you're in or, role that you have left or roles you've had over time, but you could say something like you're a strategic operations leader, an innovative biotechnology sales professional, a high impact educator, anything along those lines that really encapsulates who you are as a professional more broadly. So it's not necessarily about a specific role like director of whatever, or VP of this or that, or manager of X. It's more all encompassing, what defines you as a professional. And then ideally a statement of value under that. So, something like that you provide improvements in profitability, you grow revenue, streamline processes, create powerful learning solutions, whatever that is. Some additional tips, you do want to make sure that you limit your work experience to no more than about 10 to 15 years on your resume, depending on the length of time in your roles. And also recommendation is to remove the years from your degrees or any certifications, if not within the last couple of years. As well as summarize your key strengths and skills at the top under the headline or brand statement. And then throughout the resume for your work experience, you want to make sure that it's not just a laundry list of tasks. So, Eric, kind of in the old days, it was, well, here's everything I've done under the sun.
Right.
Right. And this whole long list of tasks. And now it's all about results and outcomes. So rather than that, you really want to focus on, well, what results did you achieve? What were the outcomes that you gained? And some people get a little hung up on, well, does it have to be hard statistics and numbers? Not necessarily. It can be, that you improved employee engagement, and here's how, and how that happened. It can be anecdotal feedback that you received. Doesn't necessarily have to be hard numbers. It's great if you had those, but, really it's all about results. And then a final tip for resumes these days is to, if you, on your previous resume, you had, it used to be you'd have this objective statement. My objective is to get a job doing blah, blah, blah. Or,
I never understood the purpose of those,
yeah,
because
and
obviously your objective is to get the job
get a
that you're
job,
applying
yeah.
for. Yes.
Pretty obvious. So just eliminate that. It can show, a datedness about your resume if you have that on there. And sometimes folks will ask, well, I can not include the years of my education if I graduated way back when, or, my professional certifications are a bit older. And then often I'll get the question, well, what about when I show up for the interview? Won't they see that I'm, in this particular age group? And so, yep, they will. And yet, at that time, you've got your captive audience. And so that's the time to really sell yourself in the interview and share how you're a perfect fit for the role. So, yep, they'll see you and they'll be able to gauge that. And don't let that, hold you back in terms of getting in the door in the first place, or getting through the applicant tracking system or through that initial screener. So making sure that you're setting yourself up well for that.
Makes sense.
So thanks, Dan. And next is a question from Crystal in Seattle. So she shares that she's been turned down for a promotion that she really wanted, that she thought was a good fit. And she's been with her organization, a nonprofit here in the area, for 15 years and is now thinking of leaving, though with everything going on this year, isn't sure if she should stay or go. Since not getting the promotion, she's not really feeling it anymore with her role. What do you think? So thanks, Crystal, for sharing that and sending that one in. I'm sure that was pretty disappointing to not receive a promotion that you really wanted. And sorry that happened for you. Can also be an equally, frustrating situation. And that's no fun either, to not really feel energized and excited about work because of this experience. So, my best recommendation for you is to really assess, consider why it is perhaps that you're leaving. So take some time, step back from it a little bit. Is it the sting of not getting promoted? Is that still stinging? So in that case, it could be a situation where, perhaps that's something to let go of. Think about it a little bit, and can you let go of it? So is it to the point where not getting this promotion has now soured you completely on the organization, your boss, your coworkers. But give that a think. What is it that's really driving your thought of perhaps wanting to leave the organization? And is there something that you need to let go of potentially? Or is it, boredom with the same old, same old? Are there any broken work relationships that might be in need of repair? So is that a driver as well to cause you to consider wanting to leave the organization? Or do you want to experience a different role or, different organization, have a change for the sake of mixing things up for your profession, for your experience? But really think about, what is it that's that driver? Are there any potential roles to move to internally, perhaps? And then you want to compare that with the risk of leaving. This is a year that has been unlike any other, at least in my lifetime. I mean, how about you, Eric? It's been such a crazy year, and now the job market is pretty topsy-turvy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been a wild one.
Yeah, I would be nervous about leaving any job that is steady at this point just because of that topsy-turviness of trying to find a new, job that would be at least similar in pay and, benefits. At this point, just me speaking, I would find that tough to do. But, it would all depend on how unhappy you were at that position. Sometimes, it's worth a pay cut if you're really unhappy.
Yeah, absolutely. Really kind of doing that assessment. And also, thinking about with taking that risk, what are your skills and strengths again? How do they best match for the roles that you are seeing? Some employers are hiring.
That's true.
And hiring is picking back up a little bit. It all depends on the industry and, who those organizations are. So it's not necessarily that it's a complete risk, and yet just, given the circumstances, just thinking about, what are some options of where to apply your skills, what's possible that's exciting. But you want to ensure, as Eric said, it's there comes a point where it's, does the unhappiness, does the misery of status quo outweigh the potential risk for leaving or, setting off on a job search to find something else? Because, you really want something that lights you up. It's not really running from something. I know for me, I've made a couple of moves over my career where it was more I ran from something instead of to something, or I thought the to something was really great.
Yeah.
And then it turned out, once I got into it, not so much. That happened where I left a firm I was working for and had gotten bored in the role, and then a carrot was dangled in front of me, an opportunity to be a program manager, and it looked great on paper, and then got in it, and then oops, was not a good fit, and there was really nothing to do behind that job description. And I only stayed 90 days.
Hard to know until you're in it, I guess.
Yeah, hard to know. How about you? Have you ever had an experience where you made a move you regretted or lost enthusiasm for a role?
I've definitely lost enthusiasm for a role. And, one job I took because my position was being terminated at another job, I took just so I had something, but I didn't stay all that long, comparatively, just because of the location of it. It wasn't comfortable. But I think in the end, it was still a stepping stone to something better. So,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's, you always take those lessons with you.
Right.
And it can lead to the next thing for sure. So thanks. And many thanks to Dan and Crystal for your questions today, too. Hope this was helpful for everyone. And again, if you have a career transition question, just send an email to reignitingyou@gmail.com. or leave a voicemail at 360-436-6496, and I'll then share it live on the air the second week of November. So it's time to wrap up for today. As a reminder, I'll be sharing a reignition recommendation at the end of each show, a tip of the week to reignite your career and life regardless of your age. My tip for you today is to document your successes and results as they happen. It doesn't matter how, use the tools you have that's available to you. It's just important that you do, so when it comes time to update that resume, go in for an interview, or launch your business, you've got those examples at the ready by way of proof to show your results. So thanks so much, Eric, for helping out with the show today. Hope it was interesting for you.
Absolutely. Great questions. Keep them coming.
Yeah, keep them coming, folks. This is how this works. We need your help to keep this going and make sure that I'm addressing the needs that you all have when it comes to your career transitions. Join us next Wednesday at 3 o'clock when we'll have our first guest interview. Our sponsor, Charlie McGee of FranNet, will be here to share his insights for transitioning to being your own boss through franchise ownership. Thanks for joining us, and talk to you next week on Reigniting You.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host, guest, and callers, and are not necessarily those of KKNW, its management, or other advertisers.